What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back with a reaction video to the first official trailer for Dune Part 2 from director Denis Villeneuve. I watched the first film last night, and I'm rocking out my Jodorowsky's Dune t-shirt. I'm in Dune mode. Dune's one of those franchises where if I'm going to do any sort of commentary of any kind, I almost have to condition my brain like some sort of mentat in order to even discuss it, because the book is delightfully complex and full of depth and detail, and I kind of compartmentalize all that information when it's not being used, but now the sleeper is ready to awaken. Or to quote Frank Herbert himself, the exact line is, "Without change, something sleeps inside us and seldom awakens. The sleeper must awaken." And I'm hoping that's what we'll see a little bit of in this trailer. Obviously, the latter part of the first book, right up here, is quite different from the first half. And I think the whole book is absolutely riveting, but expect something more grand in scale. And for me, in an era of so many big budget disappointments or franchises that have kind of jumped the rails and gone awry, Dune's that rare thing where it's big budget genre filmmaking, but with real vision, real style, real artistry, real skill. And I think it took balls of steel to break the book into two movies, because it does interrupt some of the, the tension and suspense, because the first movie ended kind of right where the book really takes off. But it helps that they assembled one of the all-time great casts, at least in the last decade, for the first film. That they just absolutely kept me riveted. And if, like me, you're a fan of the novel, obviously we're all going to have our nitpicky grievances, because this book, it represents kind of the peak of the human imagination. It's so ambitious, and it's so complex, and so endlessly rereadable. And I don't think any movie will ever feel like a total, complete success. And some of my minor complaints in the first movie would be like abandoning the mechanics of how shields work in the battles toward the end, when Duncan's taken on Sardaukar, and you can tell they have their shields on because when he hits them, you're getting that reaction. But they go through this whole scene early on in the movie about how the shields, only the slow blade penetrates, and yet because Jason Momoa is big, strong, and powerful, he's able to just kind of puncture right through in some of those final battles. That kind of stuff is annoying, but it doesn't break the overall kind of suspension of disbelief with the movie, because if anything, when you watch Denis Villeneuve's interpretation of the material, you believe it. When I see the deserts in this movie, I don't think, oh, they shot that in the Middle East. I think, oh no, that's fucking Arrakis. And for my money, Timothée Chalamet's stock absolutely went up with the first movie. I loved his interpretation of Paul Atreides, because Paul Atreides is one of those great protagonists. And I use the word protagonist, not necessarily good guy, because in the end, Paul is this like borderline abomination resulting from centuries of manipulations of bloodlines. And as we've seen in his visions, he might potentially become a messiah and a savior of the Fremen. Or, as we saw in my favorite scene of the entire movie, he's potentially a tyrant who could just rule the universe with an army, with an iron hand, with this like army of fanatics kind of carrying out a jihad in his name. I thought that scene where he and Chani are looking down on Caladan with those blue eyes, it was just so ominous, so eerie, so cool. And as far as the Harkonnens go, or the Harkonnens as I like to describe them, because that's the way it was pronounced in David Lynch's Dune, for me, they're the coolest villains in the history of science fiction. They're plotters, they're schemers, they're murderers of the highest order, and given my hairstyle, if I were in Denis Villeneuve's second movie, obviously, I would probably be forced to join them. But it's hard to know what's a spoiler when discussing Dune, because millions of people have read the books, or at least seen the David Lynch film, or watched the television series. So there are a lot of people out there who kind of know where this is going. But there are a lot of young fans where they've seen Dune Part 1, and that's it. So I'm going to be spoiler, vague in all my commentary moving forward. But what I'm looking forward to in this trailer, Austin Butler, Florence Pugh, Christopher Walken, Léa Seydoux, they're all playing major characters. Feyd-Rautha, he's basically the opposite number of Paul, but for the Harkonnens. And it wouldn't surprise me if they save his reveal for the second trailer later in the year. I'm hoping for a better explanation of the abilities and powers of Mentats, which I thought kind of got shortchanged in the first movie. I'm hoping they'll fully unleash Christopher Walken as the Emperor, a man who's really threatened by and jealous of the popularity of the Atreides. And I'm hoping we'll get a longer tease of Saint Alia of the Knife, who's perhaps my favorite character from the books. We got her for like a half a second shot in the first movie where Paul's having a vision of his mother and he realizes that she's pregnant, even though she's barely aware of it herself. But we get a brief snapshot of Alia, but she's a fascinating character. But the biggest creative challenge moving forward for this is how does this movie communicate all the information that new viewers need to know? Because in the context of the book, you get these long internal monologues. They're basically just people thinking about the plot, and that way all the information the reader needs is kind of spoon-fed to them. But that's much more difficult in a movie. But I officially have diarrhea of the mouth on this topic. Let's go ahead and watch this trailer. And then we'll talk a little bit more about Dune once it's through. So let's let it rip in 3, 2, 1.
It's breathtaking. When you see sand here, imagine water. If you dive in, you can't reach the bottom.
You dive in.
Yes, it's called swimming.
I don't believe you.
Already have
In the
chills.
shadows of Arrakis lie many secrets.
She's so beautiful that it's
The dust
evil.
of them all may remain. The end of House Atreides.
Your father didn't believe in revenge.
What if Paul Atreides were still alive?
There's my boy. I thought they were going to keep him hidden. Goddamn. Awesome Butler. It's looking ferocious. Shai Hulud.
You're brave, we all know that. Be simple.
Surf's up, motherfuckers.
Nothing fancy.
I understand.
That's badass.
Nothing fancy.
Desert power, baby. Oh, black and white for the gladiator sequences.
Paul Atreides.
We gave them something to hope for.
May thy knife chip and shatter.
If I were to tell y'all how many goosebumps I have on my neck right now, well, I would just be humiliated. So just you'll have to imagine what kind of waves of euphoria I'm feeling after watching that trailer. Holy smokes. Let me just check first to see and make sure I'm still recording. Yes, we are. Sometimes my computer freezes up when I'm recording reactions, and it's really, really frustrating. At any rate, what can we say without saying too much for people who don't know the story? But Feyd-Rautha, I thought they were going to keep him a secret, but all I'll say is that you're seeing some of his training that he's been going through. Paul obviously had training with Blade Masters and Mentats and Bene Gesserits and Dr. Yui. I mean, he had all these fascinating disciplines that kind of inform who he is. And then obviously when he gets exposed to the spice, that starts to bring about some transformations. And then obviously the final stage of his metamorphosis is living amongst the Fremen and learning their ways. And Feyd doesn't have quite as interesting a journey to take as that. However, he does have Baron Harkonnen as his mentor and teacher. And goddamn, he is just evil incarnate. And I really enjoyed Sting's interpretation of the character in the first movie, but they gave us 5 seconds of Feyd. And admittedly, in the book, there's not a ton of Feyd. There are a couple of chapters where we get to see Feyd really doing his thing. And I like how the movie seems to be leaning into his relationship with the character played by Léa Seydoux. Is it Lady Fenring? Is that how you say her name? Hang on, let me just confirm real quick. Léa Seydoux, boom, 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 boom. They're calling her Lady Margot, but anyway, she is a very important character who's involved with yet another character who I don't even know if it's going to be in the movie, but Count Fenring, who's kind of a previous opportunity for the Kwisatz Haderach, but he didn't quite make it. I probably shouldn't go down that path. That'll be too many spoilers. At any rate, no Christopher Walken, or at least I didn't see Christopher Walken in the trailer. Christopher Walken obviously is a much older gentleman these days, but I'm still hoping we'll get one or two more great performances. I mean, Salvador Dali played this character, or was going to, in Jodorowsky's Dune. I hope we'll get some decent scenes with him in the film, but who can say, but goddamn. Everything with the sandworm looked incredible. Everything with the battle scene at the end between Paul and Feyd when he says, "May your knife chip and shatter." I mean, doing the same symbol that like Duncan Idaho did before he died. It's all coming together. And I feel like all the skeptics, all the doubters, everybody who wondered whether or not that Denis Villeneuve could stick the landing, I feel like this is very good evidence that he will in fact stick the landing, and that when these two movies are available to be watched back to back, it'll be the great science fiction saga on the big screen of the last decade. And I don't think any other... should we even call Dune a franchise? I guess technically Dune is a franchise. You got books, you got shows, you got movies, etc. But it feels like it transcends the limitations of franchise filmmaking. Franchise filmmaking for me is like Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, all that kind of crap. But when you have a book that is as much a literary masterwork as it is a great work of a kind of sci-fi, then I feel like we're in a different conversation than just your traditional franchise discussions. But I'll close with this. All intellectual pretension aside, I mean, we can debate for days, kind of the nooks and crannies or the details of the book versus the movies. But in the end, cinema is an art form, like pure visual storytelling. Is it invoking or evoking an emotional response from the viewer? And as I was watching that trailer, I mean, once again, just chills down my arm. And if you're a movie fan, as you get older, that happens less and less frequently. You just get a little more cynical. You get a little more numb to the movie-going experience. And it takes something really special to really pull that out of you. And it was just a relief to see that I'm not dead yet. I'm still capable of feeling waves of joy when seeing something cool in the world of movies. So I hope you enjoyed this reaction. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. I feel like this is going to be a very interesting discussion. And I think I'm going to need to do a live stream about this over the next day or two with my friend Bill Scurry. It's been like 2 years since we've done one, so we're long overdue. But I hope you enjoyed my reaction and response. Hunt me down on Twitter at Geeking Out. Remember to hit that notification bell for future videos. But more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.